The Georgia Supreme Court today reinstated the state's 6-week abortion ban while it reviews an appeal from the state of a lower court ruling that had struck down the law. The decision went into effect today at 5 p.m. local time, meaning that most abortions in the state of Georgia will again be illegal after 6 weeks of pregnancy. And the Supreme Court returned from its summer break today with a new slate of cases to decide. But it is an issue not even on the docket yet that is the center of attention. That is the presidential election. The prospect that the court, which has a 6-3 conservative majority, including 3 justices appointed by Republican candidate Donald Trump, could be asked to weigh in on cases before and potentially after the election is high. Well, it's high because it happens during every election season. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is not taking calls from VP Kamala Harris about storm recovery just over a week after Hurricane Helene hammered parts of the state of Florida. A source familiar with the situation said that DeSantis was dodging the Democratic presidential nominee's calls because, according to him, quote unquote, they seemed political. Okay, the president and first lady today paid tribute to the victims of the October 7th attack on Israel with a candle lighting ceremony at the White House. The first couple was joined by Rabbi Aaron Alexander at Ada's Israel congregation, who spoke for the duration of the very short ceremony, first leading a prayer of remembrance in Hebrew before reciting it in English. And Republicans backing Donald Trump are threatening Deloitte, a large consulting firm that is one of the federal government's largest business partners, with the loss of billions, not millions, but billions of dollars in contracts because an employee of Deloitte shared messages from 2020 in which J.D. Vance, now the GOP presidential nominee, criticized the then President Donald Trump's record. And former President Donald Trump's campaign proposal, according to economists and other financial experts, would add more than twice as much to the national debt as Vice President Kamala Harris's would. Now, this is according to some new research out today. Though both candidates' policies would lead to trillions of dollars in new borrowing, it is Donald Trump's efforts to extend tax cuts and to cut taxes on many programs such as Social Security and tips that would add over $3.6 trillion to the debt currently, and it's Donald Trump's nationwide campaign to detain and deport undocumented immigrants. That is, if he's elected president, that would cost the country an additional $350 billion. And it is the last day to register to vote for the November election in these states. That's Arizona, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, Mississippi, Ohio, Tennessee, and Texas. Eligible voters should check their state's online registration site. You want to make sure that your registration is in good standing in case you've moved. You want to make sure you do a correction to your address. And you want to make sure when your state's deadline to register is coming up. But if you are in any of the states I just identified, Arizona, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, Mississippi, Ohio, Tennessee, or Texas, today, that's it. This is the last day to register. You will not be able to vote in the most historic election of our times. This is the news of the day, and this is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, because it's the second hour of Areva Martin in real time, we go a little deeper. We dig behind those headlines and bring you those stories that people are talking about. Well, back in February of this year, we did a story about a nonprofit organization and a man named John Mills. He happens to be a software architect, researcher, and founder of a nonprofit organization. John became very interested in the history of slavery in the state of Waterbury, Connecticut. And he he discovered, that is, some very important historical information about a formerly enslaved man by the name of Fortune. Now, Mr. Fortune died in 1798, and in an act that it was not that unusual. His bones were used by his enslaver to open a school for teaching anatomy. Now, his enslaver happened to have been a doctor himself. His name was Dr. Preserved Porter. And Dr. Porter had many family members who also became doctors. And Dr. Porter used the bones from Mr. Fortune to teach his family members how to practice medicine. They became doctors experimenting on these bones from Mr. Fortune. Well, fast forward to today, Mr. Fortune's bones were donated to a museum where they were on display for 4 decades. Ultimately, his bones were laid to rest at a cemetery in Waterbury, Connecticut in 2013. And now, on November 2nd, there will be a piece of public art in the city of Waterbury, Connecticut, paying respect and honor to Mr. Fortune, his wife, and his 4 children. In this hour, John Mills returns to the show, the researcher that discovered this important piece of Connecticut's history. Also joining us is Katiana Jarboth Smith. She is a visual artist, and she has been commissioned to create the tribute to Mr. Fortune, and also a nonprofit leader, Matt Conway, a founder of Rise Up Group, who's been heavily involved in this project, is joining me. I'm going to talk to John and Katiana and Matt about the importance of this project for Connecticut, but what this project also means on the national level, particularly as we talk about, and see states like California do something around the issue of reparative justice and reparations. When we come forward, more of the story of an enslaved man by the name of Mr. Fortune, who is about to become, in some ways, a piece of our U.S. history as a result of a piece of public art that is dedicated to his life. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580, when we come forward.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Watch out! You got me!
The galaxy is safe once again.
In the pretend universe, kids play with pretend guns. In the real world, it's up to us to make sure they don't get their hands on a real gun. If you have a gun in the house, keep it locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
King C. Gillette knows you're dedicated to your barbershop routine, but how do you maintain the beard hair you already have? The King C. Gillette Beard Thickener helps to reduce patchiness and strengthens hair's resilience to breakage. Apply the King C. Gillette Beard Thickener daily to see a thicker and fuller beard in just 14 days. It's highly scented with King C. Gillette's signature scent. Just trim, wash, and soften. With King C. Gillette.
You can do it all by yourself, baby girl. What's your name? Let me talk to you. Let me buy you a drink.
Spilled your drink? Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up spills quicker. And each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less than the leading ordinary brand. So you can get back to your night. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment through the arts. Tia Chucha Central Cultural is on a mission to transform community in the Northeast San Fernando Valley and beyond through ancestral knowledge, the arts, literacy, and creative engagement. The Northeast San Fernando Valley has a population of about 500,000, the size of the city of Oakland, yet it has no bookstores, art galleries, or full-fledged cultural spaces until Tia Chuchas opened its doors in 2001. Founded by renowned poet and activist Luis Rodriguez, Tia Chuchas Cultural Center provides a year-round free or low-cost arts and literacy bilingual intergenerational programming in mural painting, music, dance, writing, visual arts, healing art sessions, and healing talking circles. Activities also include Mexica, Aztec dance, indigenous cosmology, philosophy, and 2 weekly open mic nights, one in Spanish, the other in English. In addition, they They host author readings, film screenings, and art exhibits. To express yourself, heal yourself, attend an event, or volunteer, please visit www.tiachucha.org. That's TIACHUCHA.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back, and in this hour, we're talking about a story of an African-American man who was enslaved by a doctor. His name was Dr. Preserve Porter. The enslaved person was named Fortune, and a researcher, John Mills, has been instrumental in telling the story of Fortune and moving the community in Waterbury, Connecticut to pay homage to Fortune and his family. John was on the show back in February when this story was getting a lot of national attention, and we're doing a follow-up piece today to see what progress John has made in terms of advancing this story and advancing, preserving the legacy of Mr. Fortune. He's going to be joined in this hour by the artist who has been commissioned to create a piece of public art, paying respects and acknowledging Mr. Fortune's life, as well as nonprofit leader Matt Conway, who's been involved in this effort as well. So welcome back to the show, John. Really a pleasure to have you back. I remember when you were on several months ago, the story had gotten a lot of national media attention because we've been talking all year about reparative justice and reparations, and talking about projects like yours where folks are digging up graves or trying to put markers on graves of enslaved people. So talk to us about what has happened with this story of Mr. Fortune since you were last here in February.
Yeah, so as you know, this is my nonprofit. That's what we do, right? We go and try to find either the formerly enslaved or those in history, African Americans that may not have been the definition of what America tried to teach us as those that are exceptional. But to me, they're exceptional because these people endured and they survived and they persisted long enough for us to exist today, right? And so Mr. Fortune, as you know, was an enslaved man in Waterbury in the 18th century, died in 1798, supposedly by accident, but then his enslaver, being a doctor, then used his bones to then open a school of anatomy and teach a lot of people to become doctors, and that went on for a long while. And he actually wasn't even buried until 2013, 215 years after he died. Our idea was, he had a family. He had 4 kids and a wife when he died. He based on the studies that Howard University and Quinnipiac University and a bunch of universities did on his bones, he worked hard in life. You could tell by where the ligaments had been torn from his bones, and where he was working with a broken back that had healed before he died, and a broken arm. So he worked hard in life trying to, support his family and deal with this enslaver. So we wanted to honor that. Whereas generally, these are the type of people that aren't honored, and they're not represented anywhere. And so that's.
Let me stop you for a second, John. Of all the research that you did, what stuck out to you about Mr. Fortune? I mean, because like you said, your organization, your nonprofit does this research on historical figures, people who have been enslaved, not necessarily the Harriet Tubmans of the world, the people that, are well known to history. But what stuck out to you about Mr. Fortune's story? Well,
what stuck out the most is this was an international story when he was buried in 2013. Many people had researched the story. I'm not the first one to go digging through these documents about who he was and where he lived and how he lived. But what stuck out to me most was he was absent from that community. And then there were members of the community today, this isn't more than 11 years since his burial, that still don't even know the story. It's like it didn't get any press, and he's not represented anywhere in the community. That's what stuck out. For me, I wanted him to be injected into that community so that people would continue to know and learn from who he was. And it's a common thing in the northern states, this idea that slavery was a southern thing. And this is a reminder that no, it was broader than that. And so that stuck out the most, that he was just absent from any memory in the community visually, and that there were people in the community that didn't even know who he was. So we wanted to change that.
No, that's great. And I want to bring you into the conversation, Matt. So you're the founder of Rise Up Group. What role has your organization played in this whole remembrance project?
Yeah. Rise Up, John reached out to us, it's probably going on a year and a half at this point. And so it's a long process to make public art happen. And I think one of the things that, we bring to the table is understanding that community inclusive process. So the first thing that, we brought to the table when John reached out was, all right, who are the organizations locally in Waterbury that need to be at the table to help tell the story, help it reach a broader, audience, inject it into the community. And over the, past 18 months, we've been chipping away, at that community outreach and that community engagement. And, we found a home for Fortune's story because of that, in the north end of Waterbury, which at a community center, nonetheless, where hundreds of kids, are going to be able to see Mr. Fortune every day. So, it's that community inclusive process, through the hundreds of, pieces of public art and murals that we've done across the state that I think, have helped bring this to life. But it's been an incredible community and team process. And John and Katiana from our team, more than just an artist, Katiana is also, someone who's leading the charge organizationally, project management as well. So it's an incredible effort to try and make murals happen. It's not just, call someone, paint on a wall. It's a real labor of love and dedication. And that's how you get that kind of 2 + 2 = 5 impact, is kind of taking it slower rather than just, getting out and painting the artwork.
So what kind of response, Matt, did you get? So your job was to go out and talk to community members, get buy-in from this community. Did you get any pushback?
Honestly, not much pushback. We've gotten a lot of people that have asked, how can we help? How can we be at the table? One of the biggest challenges with public art is just finding a wall or a space. So I would say, any of the pushback was just, is this the right wall? Will this, location have the impact we want it to have? So we had a couple roadblocks with identifying a building, but the community brought us this wall, which I think makes it that much more special.
What do you think, John? Matt described this as a community center. Was it your hope that this would be housed in a community center, or were you thinking it would be on the side, say, of City Hall or courthouse or something? I mean, that's often a place of public art as well in some cities.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. My initial thought was, which was very ostentatious, right? I was like, I want to see this on the largest building in the middle of the city, right downtown, where no one can ever miss it, right? That was my original idea. But that's a tough thing to do. And we ended up getting buy-in from the mayor and the city to put it on this recreation center wall, which I'm grown to love the idea of where it's at, because it's right in the center of where, around where Fortune would have lived and would have been around. And it's right in the middle of an African-American community, of which there will be other African-Americans that will be able to enjoy this in that specific community. And it's at a community center where there's hundreds of people that are coming through all the time. So lots of people are going to see this mural. So I've grown to kind of embrace how we've kind of resolved to.
And Katiana, let me get you in the conversation. You are the artist. I know Matt said you have other hats that you wear in terms of the organization that you're a part of. But when you approach a project like this, did you have a photograph of Mr. Fortune and his wife and 4 children? What is, and maybe it's not going to be a depiction, like I'm thinking of a picture. So maybe I'll start by asking you to describe what the public art process is and what, people can expect to see.
Unmute.
Sorry about that. My approach to this, knowing that there were two former artists at the Matatuck Museum where Fortune's remains were displayed for many years, there were two artists that were commissioned previously that actually used images of his remains to actually reconstruct what he would have looked like. Those reconstructions are actually copywritten and were only allowed to be used for the Matatuck Museum's uses. So for me personally, I guess, knowing that I didn't have a full image of his skull, I would say that, I kind of reimagine what Fortune and his family would look like within this piece here.
Mm-hmm. And when you go through this process, and maybe I'll ask you, John, is there a vetting process? Is there an approval process? Like, John, you've been so close to this story. I would imagine you have a vision of what you would like this mural to look like. Are you going to be given the ability to, say yay or nay? I'd like to see things change, etc. Or is this totally up to the artist?
Well, we relied a lot heavily on Katiana. She's proficient and well respected in the art community. So I was heavily reliant on how Katiana, heard what we thought and brought to the table. And it was more than just me, right? Like, we brought in, as Matt said, the Greater Waterbury NAACP was involved. We had the local church that Fortune attended involved in this. We had the mayor's office as involved in this. The State Historic Preservation Office was involved in this. There were just a large number of entities that talked through, what we knew, what we thought, how we wanted this represented. And then, Katiana went and did her thing, which is an incredible depiction. She, as you know, those bones hung in a museum for some 4 decades. And so to kind of give the sense and the remembrance of the fact that Fortune was in a museum for a while, she's created some small tidbits within the mural that, if you know the story, you'll see that reference to the bones and to how his remains were kind of used, while still giving the great respect to him sitting in his esteem with his family. So it's just amazing what she came up with. We're ecstatic about unveiling it for the public. We're really happy that we got donations to support this from Kelly Clarkson and from Aisha Tyler from Criminal Minds. Other celebrities as well donated to this. So we're just really happy that.
And were those individuals, some of those celebrities, are they associated with this town or just got interested in this story?
I think they just got interested in this story because I'm doing this type of work across states. Like, I'm doing this in Connecticut, and New Jersey, and Baltimore, different places. But as it relates to what we were doing here in Connecticut, it got that story. There was interest from the Washington Post, and then, of course, from the Kelly Clarkson show. And then and I think those two channels allowed some folks to help us, raise the funds to bring this to fruition. So we're ecstatic about being able to unveil this for the public.
And does your work end, Matt, after the unveiling takes place?
Can you repeat that question one more time?
Yeah, does your work end? Does your work end on this project after the unveiling?
No, we're these murals are in the community for the long run. And, John and I and Katiana are already talking about how else can we inject this mural into the community. So we do a lot of work in the Waterbury schools and in the broader community. So we're always thinking now, okay, how can we bring Fortune's story and John and his organization into the work we're doing as we continue to do the work in Waterbury?
Well, I know the unveiling is taking place on November 2nd. Congratulations to you, Matt, for your involvement, Katiana, as the artist of this very important project. Congratulations to you. And John, obviously you brought the story forward in some ways. I know you said other folks have done research on it even before you, but you got it over the finish line. So a lot of praise to you for that. So just again, thanks to all of you and good luck with the unveiling. When we come forward, we'll talk more with John Mills about some of the work he's doing and other stories related to enslaved African Americans. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580, when we come forward.
Right time. More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. Grammy-winning singer and mother of the late Whitney Houston, Cissy Houston, has passed away. Her family made the announcement on social media. Cissy Houston was a soul and gospel artist who started her career as a backup singer for artists like Elvis Presley, Aretha Franklin, and Dionne Warwick. She went on to win 2 Grammys for her solo work, both for Best Traditional Soul Gospel Album. Cissy Houston was 91 years old. Vice President Harris is waving away any criticism over not having biological children by saying, quote, "It's not the 1950s anymore," end quote. Speaking on the Call Her Daddy podcast, Harris addressed comments from Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Sanders said at a town hall with former President Trump last month that Harris needs motherhood to keep her humble. Harris said she feels sorry for Sanders, saying, quote, "I don't think she understands that there are a whole lot of women out here who, one, are not aspiring to be humble," end quote. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Crews on scene of a crash in downtown on the 110 southbound just past the 10. Everything's on the shoulder, but it's a heavy backup starting at the 101. A crash in Azusa on the 210 eastbound right before Citrus is taking away the 2 middle lanes. So that's got you stepping on the brakes right about the 134. They're still cleaning up after an earlier motorcycle crash. If you're heading through Anaheim Hills on the 241 toll road northbound just before the 91, you're still going to find those 2 left-hand lanes blocked off. That's a busy backup starting at Windy Ridge Toll Plaza. And also in Anaheim on the 57 northbound before Catella, a wooden board reported in middle lane. So vehicles there swerving to miss it, and that's causing you to slow down at Chapman.
Hey, Amazon Prime members, why pay more for groceries? Shop Prime exclusive deals at your local Amazon Fresh grocery store and get savings on thousands of grocery items. Save up to 50% on weekly grocery favorites and 10% on Amazon brands. Find an Amazon Fresh store near you. Select varieties.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Magic Johnson's NFL team, the Washington Commanders, are 4-1 for the first time since 2008. The Commanders continue to be the talk of the NFL with a 4-game winning streak and the outstanding play of rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels. Daniels has completed 77% of his passes and ranks 4th in the NFL with a 106.1 quarterback rating. Magic became a part owner of the Commanders last summer. The Rams' 1-4 start is their worst start under coach Sean McVay. McVay is in his 8th season with the Rams. The 6 home runs of San Diego Padres hit Sunday night were the most homers given up by the Dodgers in a postseason game in the Dodgers franchise history. USC's loss at Minnesota Saturday night knocked them out of the AP 25 college football rankings. USC was 11th before Saturday's game. The Trojans are 1-2 in their first year in the Big Ten Conference. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 congratulates Tavis Smiley on receiving the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award from President Joseph R. Biden Jr. for a lifelong commitment to using his media and philanthropic platforms to help build a stronger nation. A host of Tavis's family, friends, colleagues, and luminaries, including LA Mayor Karen Bass, joined in the celebration. KBLA Talk 1580 wishes to thank the following partners for their support: the Weingart Foundation, Evitarist Public Opinion Research, Waters Tax Service, LA Councilmember Heather Hutt, the Empowerment Congress, Wallace and Renee Fortuné, the IQ Air Foundation, Dr. Kenneth Arduna and Central Neighborhood Christian Health Clinics, LA County Supervisor Holly Mitchell, LA County Supervisor Janice Hahn, Ambassador Michael A. Lawson, Ambassador Charles R. Stiff, and Attorney John E. Sweeney. Congratulations, Tavis, on your Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Climate justice, climate equity, climate resilience. By any other name, we demand
environmental justice in 2024 and beyond. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up.
Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number and put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month. If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
We're back, and John Mills is joining me. He is a software architect by training, but he's become somewhat of a genealogist and researcher, particularly as it relates to enslaved African Americans. He's been doing critical research on individuals like Fortune, who died in 1798 in Connecticut, Waterbury, Connecticut. He is spearheading a project to have a mural honoring the life of Mr. Fortune. But John, when you were here in February talking about your work, there were some other significant cases that you were working on, including a project involving your own relative, William Cooper. What is the status of that project now?
Yeah, that one, we're raising money. We're still trying to raise money on that one. But there are a couple things happening, my own efforts. And then there is the efforts of Dr. Kluge, who is a professor at a university in that area. He's trying to work to collect all the names of the individuals that were buried at this historically Black cemetery in Baltimore, Laurel Cemetery, so that they can kind of reconstruct who's there and find other ways to honor them. Ultimately, the story is my third great grandfather, William Cooper, fought in the Civil War in the Navy. And after he passed, after the Civil War, he was buried at Laurel Cemetery, again, a historically African-American cemetery that in the late 1950s or early 1960s was paved over to build a parking lot. And years later, after doing some research and studies of that parking lot, it was discovered that there's some 30,000 bodies underneath that parking lot. They were supposed to kind of move the graves, but they actually never did. So there's 30,000 graves there, which is, that's where my third great grandfather is. And so we wanted to figure out a way to honor him specifically. One way was to get a cenotaph or a memorial stone placed at a military cemetery that's less than a mile and a half down the road. But in order to do that, the cemetery requires that you purchase a plot. And then after you purchase the plot, the VA will give you the stone. And then we could build things around that plot, a celebration, a story that we can kind of tell about his life and what he did in the war and why he joined. And so right now we're still in the works of kind of raising the funds to purchase the plot in order to get that done.
So when you do this work, like I said, this has been an interesting year. We've seen cities around the country create reparations commissions. We've seen states like California study reparations and the influence of California on chattel slavery and the aftermath. We saw some bills get passed in the state legislature in California. I saw bills get vetoed around reparations by the governor of the state. How has that worked? This renewed, I'll call it, or almost energized interest in reparations, has that impacted your work at all? Meaning, has it helped you perhaps either raise more money or at least to raise more awareness about the importance of your work?
Well, I think the renewed interest in it, there are certain organizations that now aligned and help and agreed to help more than they probably would have in the past. But, it's a common challenge of, why are you trying to tell this sad story? Why are you trying to continue to talk about this history that was so long ago? And that bugs me. That bugs me because I these people I revere, and to me I don't see it that way. I don't see it as some trauma that I'm trying to resolve. I actually see it, if I'm being honest, I see white Americans who ask me that question as having some trauma, which is why they're trying to ask me to stop talking about it. Like, I see it as their trauma, right? And so that's a part of my work. Like, I'm trying to change the narrative with regards to the people that we're trying to remember and learn. I'm trying to, as I do my research and find this information, I'm trying to find the current day descendants so that they can get this history about their own families and they can see why they should remember them and revere who they were. I mean, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. Don't let anybody try to tell you to forget who they are. Like, so it's work in trying to change how people process learning about this history. And the outcome just happens to be ways I'm injecting these people into these communities. But it's all the legwork in between of trying to get minds to change, which to me is the actual real work.
It's interesting to me that you would say that people are, discourage you from researching this history when we know that, museums are full of statues and monuments and historians. That's what they do. They dig up history because we know knowing our history gives us a lot of insights into our current situation and into the future. So I'm also disturbed by the fact that people don't want you to discover this history. And I was going to ask you, and you brought it up, the family members. So like Fortune, were you all able to find any of his descendants?
I wish I could do that. I talked to some of the doctors who examined his bones, and I know that they have the means. The way I understand it, they have the means to determine genealogically or biologically whether or not they're currently descendants. But I think there's some legality around that. But me just trying to, by just standard means genealogically, to try to find these people, no, I haven't been able to do that. Immediately after Fortune died, his kids were shortly thereafter sold off. And his wife as well was shortly thereafter sold off. And once they're sold in different directions, we kind of lose the trail.
Right. But by talking about the story and getting the national and international attention that it's gotten, did anyone come forward to say, I heard that I was related to either Dr. Porter or to Fortune?
I haven't gotten that. I haven't, and it's easy kind of to track down Dr. Porter's relatives. Like the last person who held Fortune's bones was Dr. Sally McGlannon. She was one of the first women to graduate as a doctor from Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. And so, like, I have all the pieces of her family. It'd be really easy to trace current day descendants.
But is she related to Dr. Porter?
Oh yeah. The bones passed down within Dr. Porter's family, and each generation used those bones. When Sally McGlannon gave those bones to the museum, she told the museum about her lineage and how she got them, and she talked about how her father taught her anatomy from these bones. She also talked about how she played with them when she was a little kid. This family literally we're learning from these bones and becoming doctors all the way up to when Sally McGlannon graduated from Johns Hopkins in 1907 as one of the first women doctors to graduate from Johns Hopkins. It's a long history of doctors from 1798 all the way up to 1907. So it's easy to find them, but commonly with any African American that there's dissension that goes into enslavement, you're gonna have some challenges, right? And Fortune's no different. His is actually a little more difficult than is common.
Well, yeah, I was just curious. I know that the Jesuits, in their slavery remembrance project, they literally were able to find the descendants of enslaved African American men and women, or African men and women that were transported from Maryland to St. Louis to Kansas City to other places for the purposes of building these Jesuit universities. And they went through the whole process of identifying the descendants, and they have done a fairly effective job of finding all of the descendants of the enslaved people that were owned and enslaved by Jesuit priests in the 1800s as they were building these Jesuit universities. So to your point, it absolutely positively can be done. Obviously, resources play a big deal in that, having a lot of money, as the Jesuits do,
right,
is a factor. But when we come forward, I want to talk about, what impact do you hope this work is having, not just in Connecticut, but across the country, particularly given that we are in this most divided country over issues of race and understanding our history, Black history, efforts to ban books, efforts to ban even talking about Black history. How do you keep your work alive, and what impact do you would like for it to have on this generation and future generations to come? When we come forward, more KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
To help combat climate change, LADWP is helping neighborhoods have better access to electric vehicles by awarding nearly $130 million in EV rebates to customers just like you. From big savings on used EVs to building new charging plazas, LADWP is charging ahead to help all Angelenos experience the benefits of EVs. Get rebates of up to $4,000 for a used EV and $1,750 for a charger. Learn more at ladwp.com/EV. That's ladwp.com/EV. With reported hate crimes rising in recent years, California has responded through outreach efforts across state government and in collaboration with community-based organizations for the launch of CA versus Hate. This non-emergency, multilingual hate crime and incident reporting hotline provides an anonymous reporting option for victims and witnesses of hate acts, reported in 15 different languages through the online portal and in over 200 languages when calling the hotline. Report anonymously by calling 833-866-4283, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. or online at any time at cavshate.org. Hey, LA residents, it's planting season and the perfect time to get shade trees growing around your home. LADWP and City Plants are giving every resident up to 7 free trees. That's right, 7 free trees delivered right to your door. Trees are great for the environment, help improve air quality, and can help you save on your bill when you use less air conditioning to stay cool indoors. Learn more at ladwp.com/free trees. That's ladwp.com/free trees. Looking for a purposeful and passionate way to make a difference in your community? Volunteer with our Senior Medicare Patrol and help prevent Medicare fraud. S&P volunteers work in their community educating peers about healthcare fraud and how to prevent and detect it. Free training starts soon. Check us out online or at an S&P open house near you. We're on a mission to stop fraud. Join our team. You make a difference. Visit ca-smp-volunteer.org.
That morning chill means truck season.
5 more minutes.
No snoozing. Do it all in a Chevy Colorado or Silverado, including the class-leading range of the Silverado EV.
Talking to me?
Work, play, hauling, off-roading, a Chevy truck can take it all.
Okay, I'm up.
It's Chevy Truck Season. Get 0% financing on all 2024 Silverado 1500 pickups when you finance with GM Financial. Chevrolet, together, let's drive.
0% APR for 36 months. Monthly payment is $27.78 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment 9.3%. Plus finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with leasing some of the offers. Take new retail delivery by 1031.
We are back, and John Mills is joining me in this hour. He's a software architect who became a researcher and historian of sorts. He got very interested in researching the lives of African men and women who were enslaved in this country in the 1700s, 1800s, and he has done some tremendous work. So, John, what is the impact you hope this work has?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you know, I'm actually from the West Coast, right? I grew up in San Diego. I'm like a child of the 70s, and my father was really heavy into like what was going on at that time. He was real heavy into like the Panthers and US organization and all that stuff that was happening. He was real hard and fast about being proud of your skin color and your features and hair texture and all that stuff, right? And as I got older, I started to realize that there was a lot of outside influences that had gotten my mind to not see it that way. Like I saw white America as of greater value. And then I had to process that, like, how did that happen? And I didn't want my daughter to come to that place. So my work has constantly been about trying to find ways to get people to look in the mirror and self-interrogate to figure out if they have their own unconscious biases that could be impacting others outwardly, how they're presenting in the world. That's what this is all about. And so, and this is just one of those topics that, around history and the story of the African American in this country. That is one that I think has been purposely, the intent is to suppress us from talking about it, from learning about it, from hearing about it. Again, because I think that there's a trauma with regards to individuals that were either descendants of the enslaver or have come to a realization in current day that they've been in the center all this time. And so I think there's this push to kind of stop us from talking about this because that makes them feel bad. And I think if we buy into that, we're just kind of throwing away people that were, the million side of that 1 in a million equation, that were the people that were enduring and surviving so that we exist. And we should actually be revering them, and talking about them, not forgetting them. And we should actually be proud when we hear about them. We shouldn't be thinking from the mindset of it, oh, it's embarrassing or it's sad. That's a sad story, or they were enslaved. No, I feel like we should be thinking about it from a position of that they were powerful, they were God-fearing people, they were resilient, and that's why we are here today talking. And so that's the message I'm trying to send. I give a lot of lectures on this topic. And it seems to be garnering interest, and people are processing this different way of thinking about this type of history. But nevertheless, I still have constant challenges about telling the truth. So you keep forging.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You said you give a lot of lectures. Is it primary colleges or high school? And what is the university community? So a lot of university historians do this work. Like I said, I know from the last couple of years with the work I've been involved in around reparations that there's a lot of interest in finding grave sites and doing markers. And, even in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the race massacre, not slavery, but that race massacre where there were hundreds and hundreds of African Americans who were buried, graves were, there was a denial on the part of the government that these people were even buried in this particular part of town. And there's been this project to dig up, to discover these graves so that they can put markers, so they can learn about some of the people that were a part of that massacre. So are you being well received? Is it the college level? Is it the high school level? Where are you getting this more positive reception?
Yeah, both. My trade, I majored in software engineering, and actual day job is as software architect. But I trained in genealogy at Boston University. And so the stuff that I do comes with that background of training in this field as well. And I've been welcome and given lectures at Yale University, at Wesleyan, at Central Connecticut State University, at a bunch of different university level places, but also at the high school level and at the grade school level, which has me adjusting, how and what I say. But so yeah, there's at the university level, it's commonly right the African American Studies department. They're specifically looking to talk about that topic. So where they're talking about some of my research subjects. But yeah, it's been well received in those channels where they're already kind of talking about.
So I know Kelly Clarkson, you were on her show, so that doesn't seem like the likely place, for a conversation like this. But what was that like, and what was what has Kelly been so interested in as it relates to your work?
I think that Kelly, I think it aligned really well, because when I was on the Kelly Clarkson show, it was during the month of June, and it was on Juneteenth, and it was and my second great grandfather, Ned Mills, was freed in Texas on Juneteenth. Like there were like these overlaps, and so it kind of made sense. And it was a community story. We were coming up on doing community outreach thing at the North End Rec, where we were inviting in the community to actually help us paint the mural. So Kelly Clarkson kind of helped us get that word out about it. And then she also helped us with kind of getting my organization's name out there a little more, so that, which is helpful for me, because I'm really hopeful that I can help in helping African Americans kind of learn their personal genealogy, like not just these broad stories, but personally their personal stuff. So she can kind of help that get out there as well. And then of course it was helpful that on the day I was there, Aisha Tyler was there, and so she was able to learn more about it and contribute. And we talked after the show, and she's been incredibly helpful as well. So yeah, it was good.
It's great, and congratulations on that. When you say African Americans learning their own history, I mean, is that going to one of these Ancestry.com type sites, or what advice would you give someone that wants to learn more about their history? Like, where do they start, particularly if they, maybe don't want to use one of those online ancestry sites, or maybe they don't have the money to invest in one of those, surveys?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that the first thing that they should likely do is in most states, at probably every state, there's a state library. And at the state libraries, they have genealogists that are employed that will help you as you just walk in and ask the question. I think that's probably the first place. Like come up with a question that you're trying to figure out with regards to your family, like something very specific that will lead you down, more and more questions, but like a base question, right? Like, I don't really know who my great grandfather was, or I don't know where he came from, but here's what I know about him. Start with a base question and just go to the state library and use one of their employees, their resources there. That's what they do. They direct you on how to go figure out the answer to that question. I think that's the kind of probably the first path. But my nonprofit, it helps as many people as we possibly can, because when I started to realize, when I got older and started learning about my ancestors, as my sister was doing this research in the early and mid 90s, before there was an Ancestry.com, like she was literally traveling to places and going to their town clerks. I learned that I didn't really have interest in any of this before that. And I think that's probably common, that our African American community has little interest in a lot of this stuff. And I don't think that's by accident. I think we've been told not to have interest in this. And I think that our system of education kind of boxed it all into this small little container and didn't give us anything to feel an interest in. And I think, so for that reason, I'm also trying to affect that. I'm trying to change it. So it's like, no, we should be interested in this. And it's broader than this select few of individuals. And the story is broader. And your story is probably much more interesting than you think. And so,
it's interesting that you say that, John, because you're right. We've been inculcated with this message that, that happened a long time ago. Let's let the past be the past. Let bygones be bygones. None of us were there. And it's interesting how I'm thinking of African Americans that I know, particularly older ones, who don't want to talk about that family history, don't want to talk about slavery. And then even younger people, you often hear people say, oh, not another slave story, right? Don't want to watch another slave story. Don't want to learn about another slave. So it's kind of this a negative associated with, slavery is painful. Yes, watching certain movies with the brutality and the sexual assaults and the, physical attacks is really, really difficult. But in the midst of all that pain is our history, and burying our heads in the sand or acting like it didn't happen, doesn't make it any better, doesn't make it go away. So I'm really grateful to you for having the courage to stand up to those folks that would rather not talk about, unpleasant things in our history, to keep forging ahead and telling those stories. So good luck to you on this Waterbury, Connecticut unveiling that will be happening again on November 2nd. I'm sure there'll be lots of media and press around it, and just all the work that you're doing to tell these very, very important stories of our ancestors. Again, that's John Mills. His company is called the Alex Breen Corporation. You can find him online. And, if you want to help out this organization, the work is doing, consider making a donation. That's it for me today. Next voice that you hear will be Robin Ayers in the Raw Report. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580. Thank you, John.
Of 20,000 Black Marines that served at Montford Point and worked to dismantle Jim Crowism in America. Recovery efforts are ongoing in the Southeast with Hurricane Helene.